Hi, this is the assembly of the 2016 KinderBike Pro Series BMX style trainer. It's brand new in 2016. It's our newest model actually. And we're going to go through the assembly for you. It's pretty quick and easy like all of our bikes. It's about 90% already assembled. It requires very little assembly. We'll cover that for you real quick. First thing you do is open a box and remove the bike. And we're just going to set the box aside so we can put all of our wrapping materials in it. The only assembly that's actually required on this particular model, and actually most of our models for that matter, is to install the front wheel onto the front fork and the handlebar on the other side into the handlebar clamp. So first thing we're going to do is going to remove all of the tie wraps and the wrapping so we can get to the components and do a very quick and easy assembly. So we'll do that right now. And recommend that you place all the packaging materials, tie wraps, etc. back in the box in case you should need them later. That way you have them ready and handy. And that is the front wheel. Now like all of our models, the KinderBike Pro Series comes with an extender post for the saddle, which will allow you to extend the saddle up higher as the child grows, or for the next child who might be a little bit older or taller. Get rid of the tie wraps. This is the extender post. It's aluminum. You won't need it at the moment, so we're going to put it away. These are dust caps for the wheel nuts. We can get rid of those. You won't need them again. They're strictly for shipping purposes. And the last tie will release the handlebar. And then we're just going to begin to remove all the packaging materials, which you should be able to separate by hand. Just snap the tape with your fingers. I wouldn't recommend using a knife or scissors. You may damage the frame, the paint, etc. If you have to use it, obviously just use care. If you have to use a scissors or a knife for that matter. But really it's pretty simple and you should be able to remove it just by snapping the tape off. Like that. Left side. There we go. And the last thing attached is going to be the accessory box, which in this particular case is only the tools needed to assemble the bike. All the tools you need are in here. And we're going to go ahead and place that, and snaps open inside. So you have a wrench, which is for the wheel hardware, and two Allen keys, which is to adjust the handlebar clamp when we get to that. Now, first step we're going to do after getting all the packaging off is we're going to install the handlebar. And the reason we do that is because the front fork includes a plastic guide which allows you to, it creates a flat surface so that you can actually install the handlebar without too much wobble. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Additionally, so you know, the handlebar clamp is packaged so that it's facing inwards for shipping. It makes the box a little bit shorter. If it was out here, you can see how it would be a little bit longer, so it makes it a little bit shorter. You're just going to rotate it around when you install the handlebar. Alright, first thing you're going to do is find the correct Allen key, which is in your accessory kit. And we are going to remove the faceplate of the handlebar clamp, and you do so by removing the 4 Allen bolts. You got the right. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Remove the faceplate because the handlebar is going to sit in here, and then we're just going to simply place the faceplate back on and tighten it down. And I'll cover some nuances of the handlebar and positioning in just a moment, which are important once I remove all of the bolts. This is a smaller Allen key for reference. And you could leave one bolt in if you like, loosened up as much as possible so you don't lose a faceplate. But you don't have to if you want to remove them all for simplicity. Once you got them loose, you can do it by hand. Don't lose the bolts and the little washers that are located on there. You can see there's a little washer. Make sure you don't lose that. And we're going to remove the plate. Now, we're going to unwrap the handlebar, and I'll show you something very important on the handlebar. I'm going to snap it, the tape covering it. Now, the handlebar has ridges. Can't know if you can see that or not, but it's in the middle. And the ridges are important because they will give the bracket traction as it grips down on the handlebar rather than doing it on a smooth surface. And this is going to be centered in the middle as much as possible. By centering it, you'll know that you have equal distance on both sides of the bracket where the handlebar is the same length on both sides. So we're going to place that in the middle, make sure it's centered. Oh, and additionally, the handlebar by nature has a slight rake. It's bent, slightly curved in one direction. If I were to install it this way, the handlebars would curve outward. You really kind of want it to rake in towards the rider, which means we're going to reverse directions. And again, center it so that the ridges are in the middle. Once we have the plate on there, you let the handlebar drop down for temporarily while we install the Allen bolts here. And it's very important. In a moment, we're going to show you the proper way to tighten down the Allen bolts. We're going to do so in a star or X pattern. And that's important because when you tighten down the faceplate, you're going to have some gapping around the outside, and I will show you that here in just a minute. You want that gapping to be mostly equal around the clamp. Doesn't really affect the safety of it if it's slightly off. So you want to try and get as close as possible. Like I said, it doesn't affect the safety necessarily unless you're really far off. As long as you're close, you'll be okay. So I'll show you what I mean by now that I have it temporarily. You'll see that there is a gapping on the sides, here and here. So you want to have that pretty much the same all the way around as you tighten. And we accomplish that by tightening in a star or X pattern. So we're going to start with one bolt, tighten a little bit, go to the next one, which is across, then down, then up, in a star-like pattern. And that'll keep it pretty much equal all the way around. And you could always obviously adjust accordingly. Just cross. So now I'm looking at it, I'm going to eye it, and it's pretty close. So now we just want to rotate the handlebar into the desired position, making sure, of course, that we keep the gaps pretty much equal around. I'm loosening back up because I've gone a little bit too tight now before positioning the actual handlebar as I like it. But you can see how even without being completely tight, because of the ridges on the handlebar itself, it's actually locking. There we go. So I'm going to rotate up. I'm going to do a little bit of a rake towards the rider. I mean, it's going to angle just a little bit in, and that's from a comfort perspective for the rider, your rider. We're going to go now with it in the right position. We're going to tighten the clamps. An X or star pattern as mentioned. And we will tighten down securely. And as I check the ridges, they're all located within the bracket, which means that we have equal distance on both sides. Now, since the handlebar is assembled, we could go ahead and install the front wheel. Now, I'm going to flip the bike over to do this. And we're going to remove the packaging just as we did with all the other packaging. Now you will notice that there's gaps in the front fork. We're going to install the wheel axle through here and tighten. Also, there's an indent, I don't know if you can see it, but there's an indent inside of the fork which the wheel washer will fit into with the nut on the outside and tighten. And I'll cover more about that in a second. First, we're going to loosen up the hardware of the wheel, which is a single wall aluminum sealed bearing BMX style rough tread wheel, and it gives you really great traction on any surface, the advantage of this model, as well as our mini and loud ride models, which also come with that wheel. Now, as I pointed out, there's a little indent here which the washer will fit into, and then you will tighten down the wheel nut. Different markets are going to have different hardware for this particular model. Some will have what's called a angled washer, and it'll allow you to slip it with a little notch into this little hole, which gives you a little bit more added security. Not really necessary on this model because it has the indent, but if your market happens to have it, you can install that for extra safety should you choose to do so. And we're just going to tighten the wheel nuts with the wrench that's provided on both sides, making sure it's secure. And when we tighten it down sufficiently, it will lock that washer in place into the nut so the wheel will not come off of the front fork. Okay, now, flip it over. The last thing you need to do is adjust the height of the saddle. And you can do so with a quick release collar. We're going to open that up and remove the saddle. This particular model has an aluminum seat post, and there's an additional seat post that's a little bit longer to give you additional height. What's important here is that the insertion height, the minimum insertion height, is marked on here. You don't want to have the post sticking out of the frame where this is exposed, because then you run into a safety issue where you don't have enough of the post left in the frame for safety purposes. So we can adjust the height of the post anywhere from this safety line and safety insertion mark all the way until it bottoms out, and then of course with the other post being a little bit long, give you some additional height. The collar, which is standard on all of our models, is a quick release collar, and there's a gap in the collar itself. So when you tighten down the actual collar, it'll close the gap, and it'll close the gap around the seat tube. And if you notice, there's a gap in the seat tube as well. When it pinches down on that, it'll close the gap and close the seat tube around the seat post itself and secure it in place. So it may require a little back and forth on adjusting the nut to get the strength you need to secure it. Just tighten more or loosen as appropriate. We're going to put that back on here now. And we're going to install the seat to the desired height. And we're going to lock that in place all the way back for safety purposes. Now, you want to make sure that the front of the seat is in line with the frame. Off kilter, not good. In line, perfect. So we're going to set it to the desired height, lock it in place once it's aligned, and you pretty much have assembled the bike with the exception of going back and ensuring all of the hardware is tightened. Don't want to ride it without properly tightened hardware. That's tight. And also the same thing, you want to go back and make sure that the front plate is as tight as it's going to go. Again, start pattern. Okay, that's tight. And then the last thing to do is add some air to the wheels. They do come, the bikes, all of our bikes do come slightly underinflated on the wheels. It's because we do ship via air as well, and the various pressure changes once the product's en route in the air. We don't want to burst the tubes obviously before they get to you, so we let some of the air out. These have a fair amount of, you just have to put a little bit of air in them to get them secured up all the way. Now, that's the completion of the assembly of the BMX Pro Series trailer from KinderBike, and there will be additional videos later on the various features of this bike.